They didn't fire me. They set innovation on a timer and walked away like it wouldn't explode. My name is Elias Mercer. I turned 50 the winter the Mississippi went gray and stiff through St. Paul, the kind of cold that makes the air feel like a tight shirt. For 18 years, I was the quiet part that held a loud company together. At Kestrel Logic, polished lobby, river views, a mission statement that sounded like it had been designed by a marketing choir. I was the guy who taught the machines to breathe and the people to listen. My badge said Chief Systems Architect. In practice, I was the person everyone called when the graphs lied, but the room felt wrong. I don't give good panel. I don't say synergy without flinching. While other folks turned lunch into politics, I spent my time in the white noise at the edges of our data hall, the concrete cathedral where the floor breathes through perforated tiles and the chillers whisper like faraway ocean. If I have a talent worth naming, it's that I treat complexity like a living thing instead of a puzzle to force apart. That made me indispensable when Kestrel was hungry, underfunded, and built by people who could name each server after a favorite comic book character. Then a different hunger showed up, sleek, impatient, and wearing nicer shoes. Her name was Tessa Quinn. She had the surname that sat on the building and a degree that came with embossed confidence. 27. MBA Shine. The kind of person who could rehearse certainty in a mirror and sell it to a boardroom. She arrived with a slide deck that used phrases like future-proof and frictionless transformation, and she treated the heartbeat under our product like a relic behind glass. Elias, she said, in an office that smelled faintly of lemongrass and new leather. We're turning the page. Her laptop glowed with a skyline behind me. She didn't look up the whole time. She turned my work into a cost center and my career into a column on a spreadsheet. Define turning, I said. Machines run hot when you slam them. You get less smoke if you ask questions. Cloud first. ML-driven. Secure from the ground up, she answered, like she was reading the label off a vitamin bottle. We have to reorganize for speed. Your role, it's not aligned with where we're going. You're replacing the guy who built the foundation with someone who likes the color of the curtains, I said, before my better judgment arrived. She smiled with her teeth. My fiancé will be leading the modernization. Blake Voss. Brilliant guy. Predictive ops, reinforcement learning, all of it. He understands scale. I remembered Blake from the holiday event, the one who weaponized the word disrupt and laughed a beat too early at his own jokes. People who lean forward on tables when they talk, like they're pushing the conversation uphill, make me tired. You'll need to transfer all credentials, maintenance windows, emergency procedures, Tessa said, turning her screen slightly away from me like we were strangers on a bus, and put together documentation for the board. HR will be in touch about your package. Out in the lobby, a junior designer was pointing a camera at the new mural, a deadweight word carved out of steel, accelerate, bolted to concrete. In the reflection, Tessa and I looked like we'd been trapped inside the letters. I'll deliver everything, I said. I meant that literally. She heard I'll disappear. For 3 days I lived inside the rhythm of last times. I wrote the kind of manuals nobody reads until the building is on fire. I mapped dependencies like a mind that refuses to forget family trees. What talks to what? Who panics when who goes quiet? Which batch jobs build a little runway for the next job to make its landing? I wrote down the thing you can't write down, or not to be brave. Do not patch the payment bus between 3 and 5 p.m. on the last business day of the month. Do not trust power rails B12 through B15 to hold steady when the West Chiller is shedding load. Do not ship anything that begins with small tweak after lunch on Fridays. I didn't booby-trap anything. I have never sabotaged a system I might need to save. Spite is a poor mechanic. But 20 years of listening to the personality of a room doesn't compress to an index. We call the work ops, like it's a menu item. It's closer to weather. Blake met me in Cold Isle for like it was a movie about competence. He dressed like the office was an Instagram account, slim jeans, shoes that were clearly allergic to dust, a shirt that had never met a cable tray. Elias, he said, lifting the binder like it might bite him. I've been studying how we can apply reinforcement learning to thermal management and autoscaling. The system will tune itself. Imagine self-healing everything. It already preserves itself, I said. We gave it instincts. We taught it not to panic. He smiled that silicone smile some men practice in front of cameras. Legacy thinking assumes past choices equal truth. I slid an encrypted drive across the workbench. Every password, every recovery flow, the stuff we only say out loud when the lights are steady, it's all here. If you read it like a machine reads log lines, it won't help you. Read it like a novel about a character who can die. He flipped pages like he'd been cast for the part of genius in a streaming drama. We'll be fine, he said. You don't argue with gravity. You make sure the rope holds, and you leave. On my last day, I took my daughter's photo off the filing cabinet, the one where she's 9, wearing ear protection 3 sizes too big and holding a torque wrench like a sword. I packed the ugly ceramic mug that says you're only as secure as your laziest admin. I watered the plant that had made peace with fluorescent winter. People hugged me like they were touching wood for luck. Maya from Network, who could step into a room and see the lazy cable in the ceiling everyone else ignored, caught my elbow. Maya has the kind of eyes that improve a room just by noticing it. You good? She asked quietly. He asked me yesterday if fire suppression still uses chemicals or whatever. Everything still uses or whatever, I said, and we both tried not to laugh because laughing would turn into something else. I drove home along the river with a box of belongings seat-belted like a toddler and expected collapse. Instead, I got the high, light feeling of someone who's just put down a heavy thing they'd taught themselves to carry like a birthmark. The first week off tasted like sleep and realized chores. I fixed the kitchen drawer whose track was bent enough to make me grit my teeth every time it stuck. I walked my mud, rook, through snow that squeaked underfoot. I took long, unnecessary showers and relearned how to pour coffee without reading a dashboard at the same time. On day 9, Maya called at 8:02 p.m. without hello. They turned the room into a sauna, she said in the tight voice of someone keeping panic under a blanket. Blake pushed a model to optimize energy spend. It decided we've been cooling too aggressively based on some dumb baseline. Fans are up, chillers are stepping back, and the hottest sensors are reporting expected because the model told them to. I can see the temp rising. The automation refuses to escalate. It thinks fries are a sign we're cooking. Manual bypass, I said, already walking to my desk where an older copy of the facility handbook lives in a drawer like a superstition. Panel 3C, bottom right. Looks like a breaker. Lift the guard, key it to override, hold until the lights roll, and it clicks twice. It will revert to static thresholds and ignore the model. Chain of command says I don't touch anything in experimental mode without approval. He's in a meeting with Tessa and the board. The building is a casserole. If it hits 90 at rack level, you leave, I said. I want you outside the door with your badge out. Document everything. Email it to yourself and your personal address. Use your phone camera on the displays. She blew out air into the phone like her mouth was a straw. He's going to get somebody hurt, she said, and hung up. There are 100 kinds of dread. The kind that drops you without warning, and the kind you listen to for hours like a washing machine out of balance. I sat with the second, poured bourbon I didn't want, watched Rook dream with his paws twitching, and told myself the same thing I tell machines. Breathe small. At dawn 2 days later, my phone lit with a number I once associated with pastries and unforced compliments. Arthur Quinn, Tessa's father, the founder who still carried some of the original dust. Elias, he said, voice wrung dry. We need you. What did you do? I asked, already elbow deep in the remote diagnostics portal we never told the consultants about because they don't believe in doors without badges. Blake's improvements. He put so much weight on the word it cracked. We've got uncoordinated shutdowns, failovers to nowhere. The energy controller and the security layer started arguing. Now Auth thinks half the systems are imposters and won't let them back. Clients are. Well, you can imagine. The state is here. If we don't have a path by Monday, I don't think Kestrel exists. 4 heartbeats, I did the petty thing. Then I remembered the people who keep their houses because payroll lands on time and the pharmacists who count pills because the system told them a transfer settled when it did. I remembered Maya. Open port 6023, I said. Temporary token to my cell. Put it in the contract later. Let's get you breathing. You'll be taken care of, he said with a rushed man's promise. Whatever it takes. Write nothing yet. I said, typing. We'll talk when the room stops screaming. The screens told a story I didn't enjoy reading. Blake had tied a self-tuned controller to a set of assumptions that don't survive contact with weather. The math convinced itself we were overcooled and dialed back exactly when we needed slack. Heat rose unevenly. Load balancers, while meaning, pushed traffic away from hot stones to colder ones across the aisle, which spiked them instead. UPS clusters saw surge, tried to help, drained in little acts of bravery until nothing left could absorb surprise. One of the core queues choked, spat a block, and the little honest cop I built in the security layer blew its whistle, pulled down metal gates, and said, "Nobody moves until an adult says who they are." Trouble is, the adults had been put outside the room. A message blinked in Kestrel chat, so short it read like a confession. "Elias, I misjudged the interactions," Blake wrote. "Please advise." Another, formal and raw at the same time, from Tessa. "I was wrong. Help us." There's a music to crisis when you've heard it enough times. You work in verbs. Roll back. Unwind. Keep. Drop. Check again. You speak in sentences that fit in a breath. You divide tasks into hands. "Get me in the building," I typed, and grabbed the hoodie with the cracked Kestrel bird across the front, because superstition is just experience dressed as luck. News vans were posted up along the curb like locusts with logos. Groups of employees collected in the lobby with the nervous gravity of people whose mortgages stack on the same ledge. The guard downstairs, Reg, a giant whose face resets around dogs, gave me a look that said family and paid bill at once. He didn't ask, authorized. He said go. Tessa waited by the elevator bank with yesterday's eyeliner and an expression I've seen on surgeons who cut the wrong way by accident once and never again. "It's my fault," she said like she wanted me to absolve something I couldn't touch. "It's ours," I said. "Let's change the ending." Inside, the data hall smelled like that unnatural heat that comes from electronics instead of bodies. The air has a taste when it's been wrong too long. Tin, ozone, something like a penny pressed to the tongue. I took Blake by the arm like he might bolt. "Read," I said, pushing the dog-eared operational runbook under his nose. "We will start by treating physics like a partner. Maya, panel 3C override. 2 clicks. Hold until the ugly light stops flashing. Quinn, no, not you. The elder, stop calling people and stand right here. If I drop, you finish my sentence to the person on my left. We will not bring up all power at once. We will not keep the predictor in the loop while we're bleeding. We will not touch the database indexes until the room is cold." The next hours emptied me and filled me at the same time. We pumped heat out like bailing from a small boat. We rolled back thermal profiles to one I wrote 5 winters ago when power was cheap and the goal was live. We moved traffic with the cynicism of someone who has been lied to by load balancers before. We picked a restore point from the hour before everything got efficient. We watched checksums pass and fail and pass again. Every little green box felt like a sigh you didn't know you were holding. At 2:19 a.m., we reached the part of the job you can't teach, the quiet 10 minutes when everything looks right, and you decide not to push the last button because your gut says it's the one that breaks your night. We waited. Nothing screamed. We pressed it. The grid settled. Arthur appeared at my shoulder in the cooling dawn of the server room, the hours when the light in there feels like morning even if it's night. He looked older than the portrait upstairs where he's shaking hands with a mayor and smiling like a billboard. "I should have put a hand on this," he said to the floor. "You trusted your kid to know what you spent 20 years learning," I said, more gently than I felt. "That's a sweet story. Sweet stories don't make good policy." He took it. The thing about founders, the honest ones still like being told the truth like it's an expensive scotch. Burn, then warmth. "What do you need?" he said, voice steady now because he'd decided the pen belonged in his hand again, not as a favor. "To stay. To lead. To keep us from doing this to ourselves in new costumes." I looked past him to the racks, breathing like a horse after a hard run, ears twitching, chest steadying, alive. I looked at Maya writing the post-incident notes already because memory is a liar. I looked at Tessa, sitting on a crate, forehead in her hands, a person instead of a role. 4-year contract, I said, because 5 felt like hubris and 3 felt like a dare. Director of Reliability and Core Systems. I report to the board on anything that can take us offline for more than a coffee break. I pick a team and I pay them what I wish someone had paid me. No more shipping changes to power or cooling logic without a human with scars reading the diff. No launches on Fridays. We write public postmortems that don't search for a villain. And Blake, he doesn't touch prod until he earns calluses. Arthur didn't flinch. Done, he said. Paper tomorrow. Today, you call the shots. The recovery wasn't cinematic. It was laundry. Sort, wash, don't mix the colors, don't shrink the sweater. We clawed back 3 days of data without lying to ourselves. That meant we called over 1,000 customers and said words like, "We have to rerun this, and we're crediting you for the delay, and we're sorry," which costs nothing and saves you more than you think. It meant rebuilding indexes at 4 a.m., while sirens in the next city overmoved in the dark like slow lightning. It meant admitting to regulators that our protection worked too well and designing the part where a human can whisper, "Stand down, friend, it's us," and the system believes them because it's been taught the shape of a trustworthy voice. By sunrise, the graphs looked like graphs again. Not art, just information. The best compliment. When I asked Arthur to walk with me out of the room, he did. When we passed Blake, he didn't look up. A broken confidence leaves a person quiet. "I believe the model would do the right thing if I fed it enough past," he said when he finally found words, not looking at me so much as addressing the floor. "Models are mirrors," I said. "They show you a cleaned-up version of your assumptions. Physics still gets the last vote." He nodded, a man who just learned the cliff's height by falling off it. "I'll find something else. Find somewhere you can be an apprentice," I said, "and stay that way longer than you think you need to." The next month was the ugliest kind of beautiful, a city after a snowstorm when the plows have come through, and the curb is still a mess, but you can move. I hired 4 people who know how to read the air. I paid them like it's a thank you note and a bribe. We tore out the worst of the automation and put back the part where a person with a pulse signs the page before you risk 1,000 others. We carved the word slow as fast into our calendar by refusing to ship on Friday afternoons, even when marketing made eyes at us in meetings. We printed an incident report that didn't name names, but named every choice. We wrote at the top, "The system is US." For a season, Kestrel was a punchline on tech blogs. Everybody loves a morality tale as long as it happened somewhere else. We took our fine. We replaced the 3 servers that looked like warped vinyl records under their pretty faceplates, and we called 73 people back to apologize again because I'd rather be annoying than a liar. We lost 2 clients who needed to perform dominance. We gained 3 who said, "The way you fixed it impressed me," which is the kind of sentence that keeps the lights on. Tessa lasted 6 weeks in strategy before she asked for something honest. Arthur put her over a small internal tooling team where she couldn't crater a city if she sneezed. She learned to ship small and ask unglamorous questions. She learned to be wrong in rooms that forgave you for it as long as you were fast and kind and didn't pretend. The part of her that wanted to be congratulated began to enjoy being competent. There's hope in that. We added a line to the wall under Accelerate. It wasn't mine. An intern taped a handwritten index card that said, "Explain how." Someone from facilities had it remade in bronze so nobody could peel it off. 6 months after the meltdown, a Minneapolis tech conference asked me to talk. I almost declined. The work I love does not love microphones. But there was a way to turn what we'd learned into a sermon that wasn't about shame. I called the talk, "Heat Has a Vocabulary." I told a theater full of CTOs and ops folks the part no one puts in keynote decks. "Your crisis will begin with something you can't feel if you're not watching," I said. A 2-degree rise. A cue that takes 1 more second. An engineer who says, "This feels off," and a manager who says, "Ship anyway." You can build a culture that treats that moment like a smoke alarm instead of a squeaky hinge. Or you can keep a bucket of PR statements under your desk and hope you never have to open it. People laughed where relief lives. They took notes where fear lives. Inside Kestrel, we got boring in the best way. Maya ran the part of the team that doesn't get thanked because nothing broke. We started a ritual called the Almost every Wednesday where someone tells the story of a near miss and nobody gets in trouble as long as they tell it true. Arthur stopped by the data hall twice a month with bagels and questions. He never interrupted an answer with a buzzword again. Blake popped up 6 months later at a small MSP in Duluth working the night shift. A friend sent me a photo. Him at a workbench, hair under a headset, typing. The caption said, "He's calm on the phone. Clients like him. You could do worse than learning to apologize well for a living. He'll be different when he tries innovation again." Differences that start with sorry tend to stick. Years pass the way they do when you love your job in a sustainable way. Quick and then, somehow, slow. My 4-year contract turned into a second without negotiation because everyone involved knew where the value was. My daughter, Rowan, turned 21 and decided that code felt like a language she could think in. She sent me a text that said, "Teach me the part you can't print." I brought her to the data hall on a quiet Saturday. We wore the ear cans that make your heartbeat sound like a drum line. I told her that false positive is sometimes a synonym for bless your instincts. We ate vending machine pretzels and watched the LEDs play polite. She fell asleep on the couch in my office with Rook's head on her ankle, and I thought, if revenge looks like this, I'll take it. By the time I retired at 54, there were younger hands on every lever I used to clutch. We had a crew who could listen to a rack and tell you which fan was eating its bearings. We had managers who could send an email that said no and not apologize for the period. We had a founder who had learned to leave and return without expecting the room to clap. On my last day, someone brought a cake with the kestrel bird done in frosting that tasted like blue dye and celebration. Arthur tried to say a thing about pillars, and I shook my head until he made it about neighbors instead. I set up a little consultancy in my garage with a space heater that clicked like a Geiger counter and a chair that didn't make my back argue with me at night. I flew to a hospital in Omaha and told them not to replace a monitoring system that needed respect more than replacement. I sat in a warehouse in Reno and taught a foreman to feel the air. I answered executive emails at 2 in the morning from people who wanted permission to do the right, slow thing. In late spring, an email slid in from an address that used to make my shoulders tense. Subject, an apology I owe. It was from Tessa. She said she had mistaken velocity for competence. She said she had turned her father's trust into a demo of her confidence. She said she knew the difference now and was trying to earn something quieter than applause. She said she was sorry for the day she asked me to box up my life like it was inventory. I read it twice. I let it sit. I didn't write back. Not because I'm cruel. Because the story had already decided it was done with that thread, and tying it would tangle everything again. Every so often I walk past Kestrel as a stranger with a visitor badge, the way you visit a childhood home after somebody else paints it a sensible color. The wall still says accelerate, but under it, etched nicely, permanent, there's the bronze tag from the intern. Explain how. It makes me laugh. Not because it's witty. Because it's plain. Plain is faith to me after all the shine. I take the elevator down to the only room that ever felt like church. I stand in the aisle between racks and inhale air that smells like nothing. The most beautiful scent in the world when you work with power and heat. The machines exhale in time. The lights blink a polite metronome. I put my hands in my pockets to keep from straightening a cable that doesn't belong to me anymore. Reg catches me in the lobby on my way out. "You good, Mr. Mercer?" he calls, like I live in his memory the way his name lives in mine. "I'm good," I say. And I am. Feels like the right temperature. On the drive home, I pass a billboard that promises a new fintech will reinvent trust, and I don't even sigh. The radio finds a song I don't know. Rook's chin settles on my thigh at a red light like it always did when he was younger and the world was a little too big. The river looks like spilled steel under the bridge. The city gets complicated without asking. I keep insisting on respect. If you came for a scene where I flip a table and storm out, wrong channel. That's not the kind of satisfaction I get. Mine is colder and it lasts longer. It looks like a system that keeps going because you convinced everyone to be a little less interesting and a little more careful. It looks like a daughter who texts you. My gut and the graph disagree. Which one do I listen to? And you tell her, both. Let them argue. Then you decide. It looks like a kid who used to say AI, like a spell learning to say latency, like it matters. They didn't fire me. They set a fuse and mistook the hiss for applause. The fuse burned itself out because it had nothing honest to catch. The work we did, stubborn, steady, outlasted the fireworks. The lesson outlasted the people who tried not to learn it. That's the revenge I keep, not the ruin of anyone. The making of ruin more difficult next time. The air itself saying, in whatever language machines use when we're not around, not that way. Try again. Slower.